G'day guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be working on the new 4.8 GU again. This should be the third build episode, I believe. Today we're going to be chucking in some shocks. So these are the Formula 3-way adjustable shocks through Fulcrum Suspension. On this side we've got the fronts, and then on this side we've got the rears. What I'm going to do is give you guys a full rundown on the specs, why I went with these, and then obviously I'll throw them in the car. And then at the end, I chucked up a story on my Instagram earlier today, asking some questions from you guys on what you want to know about these shocks. So I'll answer some of them. And then either at the end of this video or in the next sort of upcoming videos, you'll see a lot of clips and stuff of us using these shocks. Some specs on these, so 3-way adjustable. So you've got high speed compression, low speed compression, and then your rebound. So with your high speed compression, you've got 8 different levels of adjustment, and then your low speed you've got 6, and then your rebound you've got 12. So the benefit of having that adjustment is for when you're doing all sorts of different driving. I know for me, example, we do a lot of like highway driving, but then we're also going to be doing a lot of rock crawling, sand, you name it. Going to be going on and off road a lot. So having that adjustment means you can sort of wind it up, get it a bit stiffer when you're on the road. So when you're cornering and stuff, it handles a bit nicer. And then when you're doing some flexier sort of tracks, you might have it really soft so it's nice and plush underneath and you're not worried about body roll as much. And then when you're doing some beach driving and you might be hitting heaps of bumps and jumps, you might want to play with your rebounds so it's not kicking all over the shop. So it's all on the go as well. Like you've got the dials here, so I'll get some close-ups of that. And you can basically jump out of the car, quickly make the adjustments on the go, and then keep going. So I have had these shocks actually in the GQ previously, but we're changing plans with the GQ, so that's why it's now going in the GU, as this is going to be our main focus build for the rest of the year until some upcoming plans start happening. So the reason we've gone for these ones as well is, main reason is honestly the price. So these price in a lot more competitive, I guess, compared to some of the other brands in a 2.5. So obviously you can go pretty much anywhere and get a very cheap 2.0 shock, and after a few like 1,000 Ks they're going to go to shit, as well as soon as you're doing any high pace driving or rally packing, any stuff like that, once the shock gets heated up, there's just nowhere for that oil to go and it starts fading away. So obviously having the remote res is a huge benefit there. You've got all that extra oil capacity to help with cooling, but then also the body itself is just a much bigger body. So even in the body itself, it holds a lot more oil. And then obviously the adjustment's a huge thing there. So for the front, we're actually running a 80 series shock. So a lot of people don't know this, but an 80 series and like the 70 series and the GU GQ, they're all pin to pin in the front. So the open and close lengths are the main things I look at. So with these, an 80 series 4-inch has a longer open and close length than the 4-inch in the GU and GQ Patrol, which means because we're running a 4-inch lift in the front with 37s, we're going to be able to utilize the whole travel of this shock compared to if we were to run the 4-inch GU. I'll get a bit of a spec sheet up showing you the measurements of that, but this just works out a lot better because by the time we have the GU on full bump, where the tire's just about to hit the guard, we'll still have a little bit of shock play and we'll be able to utilize all that down travel then as well. But then in the rear, we've stuck with the 4-inch rear of the GU GQ. So that's just being because this is bush to bush and that's basically the only option you've got. So this way, we've got pretty much as much up and down travel in the front and the rear as possible, and it's going to give us the best setup all round. Okay, I'm going to quickly run you guys through more of the specs that I was talking about with the open and close lengths. So for the front, I've written down 80 series 4-inch and then the GU GQ 4-inch. So if you look at the 80 series, you've got 676 millimeters open length and then 422 close length. Then with the GU, you've got 575 open and 360 closed. So if you calculate that, the 80 series gives you 254 millimeters of travel, which is 10.2 inches. And then the GU GQ only gives you 215 mil travel, which is 8.6 inches. So quite a big difference for the same 4-inch series, but the 80 series will bolt into the GU, giving you more travel. And if you're running a bigger tire, like a 35 or a 37, like what we are, when you come in to measure from your shock tower here at the top down to the bottom at full bump, that will still give you a much better measurement suiting that 80 series. So if we come back to this 422mm close length, when our tyre is just about to hit our guard from that tower, we still have greater distance than 422. So it basically means we're just utilizing more of the shock. If we were to put the GU or GQ one in, we'd still have like a good couple of inches of shaft showing with full up travel. So we'd be wasting that extra travel and then losing even more down travel. So if you're running like a 33 or something, then you'd probably go with the GU, GQ, and you'd get more up travel with the tyre size, but we're obviously very limited too. So that's what we're going to be doing. So now that I've talked about that enough, I'm going to jack this car up. I'll pull the coils out to show you the coils that we've got as well, because they're also through Fulcrum, and then I'll get the shocks in, give you guys a proper look at how we mount them up, and then we can take this thing for its first test drive. I'm just going to quickly run you guys through the design of the body of these as well. So obviously the rears here comes with the clamp to mount the res to the body, or you can also clamp it to a part of the body on the car if you'd like. On the top of the res here, you've got your low and high speed compression. So you've got the dial at the top here, you go left to go lower, and you go clockwise to get firmer, and same on that adjuster. And then down the bottom of the shock is where you've got your rebound adjuster. So same thing, you'd go left to turn it down and right to get stiffer. And then on the front, it's the same thing. You've got your rebound adjuster on the bottom here, which is nice, easy clicker there. And then same on the res, you've got your low and high speed compression on the top. So as long as you mount these in a nice, easy access spot, it's super easy to just get to and change on the go. Alright, so first step I'll be doing is just chucking my jack underneath the radius arm here and jacking it up as high as possible. I have already got underneath and undone the sway bar, and the shocks are obviously already pulled out because we've got no shocks in it currently. So I'm just going to keep jacking this up, hopefully get enough travel to get these new shocks in. We might have to undo the actual shock tower on the top, which is just 3 17mm nuts, just because the tower will need to be pulled off to get the res through the actual hole first. So I'll show you once I get to that part, but that's pretty easy access. Oh, I've got it jacked up now. I'm just going to quickly show you guys, this is the new coil springs we got from Fulcrum as well. So this is the 4-inch front, which it's currently loose because we've got this thing jacked up about 10 inches at the moment. But you can see this is in there. So this is a 4-inch front, and then the rear we've got 3-inch. And we do need to still switch out these bump stops, but they haven't arrived yet. So I've got a set of progressive bump stops with a 50mm spacer, and that should give us enough space to hopefully stop this tyre from destroying this flare. So once that comes, that'll be another video. For today, we're just doing coil springs and shocks, and then we'll finish off the suspension another day because we've got new arms to go in. We've already got the extended sway bar links from Formula as well. And then we've got to do brake lines because you can see that thing's hanging on for dear life as well. So this is the tower I was saying you're probably going to have to remove as well. So that's welded on the top. So underneath here, you've just got a 17mm nut there, and then on the inside of the coil tower here. So I'll pop them off first, and then I'm just going to get the shock mounted down the bottom. Then I'll run the resi through the hole first in here, and then the actual shock body itself will come through, and then I can put this back on. So I'll see if I can set up the tripod in here so you can see that process, and that way you guys can do this yourself at home as well. Alright, so I've got these 3 nuts off, but what happens with the GQ and the GUs, this back bolt here always hits on the firewall here. So you sort of got to get a pry bar, angle it in there as good as you can, and then try like bend the body back a little bit to get this tower to come up enough. So I'll try play with this off camera, and then hopefully be able to wriggle this out. Okay, so got the tower out, got the first shock in here. So I'm gonna grab the remote res here and I'm actually gonna feed that up through the hole first. So it's a little bit awkward. Try not to block the camera too much, but that should come through there and grab that. Sort of got to angle it the right way like that. And then you twist it in and you should be able to get the rest of it through. Like that. And now I've just got to lift the bottom of the shock up, get the bottom sitting in place, and then I'll be able to put that tower back on. Or I might even let this hang down first like this, put the tower in, that way I don't have to compress the top, and then I'll focus on the bottom. So I've just rested the shock tower back here. You want to make sure the res and the hose comes through this gap here, because it'll be way too tight through there, and obviously it won't fit out the back. So now that I've got that in, I've just got to try and get it to pop back in the holes. And then once I get this into position, I have to maneuver that back one in. So that's in there. I can do up these 3 nuts again, then lift the shock up, do up the top nut, and then I've just got to compress the bottom of the shock. And then that's one side done. Okay, so just managed to get this front shock in. So I've got the tower all bolted back up, and then I just lined the top up. Haven't even bolted it up yet, but it's in. And then I just used a bit of big boy Aussie strength, lifted the bottom up because I had to obviously compress it a bit because it was too long for the amount of travel we've got currently, and then got the bottom in, and now I can just do those nuts up, and then it's just deciding where to put your res. So there's 2 options in my opinion. It's sort of tucked up here, which is nice easy access, and it sort of works for the hose there, or you've got to flip it around there and have it on top here. But I don't really have a mount that'll sit here currently, and I sort of like the look of where that goes there because I think you'll see it in videos and photos more. So I'm going to grab the res bracket and get it nut-surted into the firewall here, and then get this bolted up, hose clamped, and we can move on to the other side. Alright, so got the front end done now. You can see I've got the shock in there, and I have just cable tied that res there for now because I didn't have any nutserts left over to mount the bracket properly, but I'll update you guys once I do that. You can see the coil springs in there. I might actually add a 1-inch spacer to that because where it's currently sitting, it's probably 1 inch below where we want it. So I might play around with that down the track. And then obviously I've done this side too, which I didn't film because I don't need to bore you guys with that too much, but this shock is also in, and that res is also cable tied, but it is out of the road, so it'll be fine to drive. And now I'm just about to move on to the rear, so I'll jack the rear up. The bolts, the rear shock should be a little bit easier because technically you don't really need to jack it up, but it will be a bit easier. That way I don't have to compress the shock as much, but I'll explain that once I'm under there. I'm at the rear end now, and you can see I've got the new coils and shocks in, so these just chuck straight in, nice and easy. And then the shock, basically I just put the top in, jacked the car up, got the bottom lined up, made sure I had my rebound adjuster facing inwards just for ease of access. And then I just played around with this mount that basically holds the res to the body of the shock. And I just made sure that it's not going to hit on anything. So when I put the new bump stops in, it won't hit there. And then as it comes down, the body of the res there should miss the brake and everything and the diff. But I think what I'm going to do is down the track, I'm going to make up a little bracket that mounts off the fuel tank here, and the res from this one and the other side over there will sit in here. That way they're just completely out of the road. So when we're going off-road and stuff, they can't get hit or anything. And that way they look parallel, because this side is mounted slightly different to over on that side, just because you've got the panhard mount and stuff, so you're a bit more limited for room. But now I can get the car off the jack and go for a quick test drive. Front and the rear shocks are fully bolted in now. I've got this res mounted up with the bracket, so I just put some nutserts into the body, got that hose clamped up, and just chuck some black paint around all here to make it look a bit nicer. So that's all done, and I've been for some drives and it handles unreal. Rear's the same, and then we've just had the rest of well, not the rest, but a bit more of the suspension rock up. So we've got some extended bump stops, so these have got 50mm spacers, so these are obviously the rear, they'll bolt straight in, and then these will go in the front, and they've got either 25 or 50mm spacers as well. But being that we're running 37s, I assume we're going to need both of these pucks, but I'll update you guys with what I end up going. And then got a set of rear coil retainers, so this will bolt down, so that if the shocks are too long and that rear coil wants to come loose, this can help retain that and not let it fall out. And then in here is a set of rear long arm fix mounts. So when you do rear long arms, which obviously I haven't done yet, these are still the factory arms, but we've got some long arms coming, and when you do that, your upper control arms then need to be raised to fix all the geometry issues you face. So a lot of people don't do this, but it is definitely worth doing, because it basically raises it like 30-40mm, I don't know the exact measurement, and it just gets all your anti-squat values, all your geometry much happier. These are the bolts for those front ones. And then here we've got a braided extended brake line kit for the TB48. So because this has ABS, I believe, it comes with 3, so there's 2 at the front, 1 at the back. And then that way, that will be the last thing restricting all the down travel. Got a set of custom plates that probably won't go on in this video, but that'll be in the next video. Front and rear bump stops are all done now. You can see they're in there, which will also now help with keeping that front coil in. I was going to originally keep the coils out, drop it on bump and make sure the tyre's clear, but it was just going to be a bit awkward without a hoist. But I did measure it, because these bump stops compress to 70mm, so I've basically just done the maths, and on the front I should have about 20 to 30mm clearance, and then on the back I should have about 10 to 20, so should be sweet. And these are also the heavy duty ones, so you can get a softer bump stop that compress to even less than 70mm, but I just wanted to go heavy duty just to make sure we don't pump the guards in with these big tyres. So next thing is the brake lines, but I'm going to just quickly go get some extra brake fluid from the shop, because I don't have any here, so if I start draining brake fluid, I won't have any left. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the question and answer segment of the video. So I've written down my top 5 questions that I was asked. So the first one was, do they come in longer lengths? So like I touched on earlier, the fronts you can play around with a bit more, because you can sort of dive into the Toyota pin to pin. In the rear, I'm not too sure. I didn't really look into it as much, but I just knew that for what we had, which is a 4-inch lift and 37s, the 4-inch GU rears were still going to be long enough. Obviously, when you do go this bigger body shock, you do lose a bit of travel, because obviously everything's bigger, so you lose a bit of that, I guess, spacing. When you run a 2.0 shock, you usually can get a bit more fitment and longer lengths, but for us this is going to be plenty. And these fronts you can get up to about 11-inch. So I think the rears worked out to be about 10 to 10.5 inches of travel, and then the fronts are closer to 11-inch, which is plenty for what we do. Any more than that anyway, and you're going to have your coils be popping out and stuff, especially if you're not running coil retainers. So this is just the happy medium. What is the price? So for all 4 shocks, if you get a similar kit to what I've got here, you're looking at $2,800, which is about $700 per shock, which is well below a lot of the other brands out there for a 2.5 3-way adjustable. And then if you want them to install it, because Fulcrum offer heaps of install shops all around Australia, it's around $3,700 to get the 4 shocks plus install. And they do have specials on and off throughout the year as well, so just keep an eye out for one of them. Third question is, how do they compare to the other brands? Now, I've been driving patrols and stuff for probably 4 or 5 years now, had all sorts of different brands and setups of suspension, and like I did mention before, we did have these in the GQ for a little while there, and these honestly blew my mind. I was very surprised. We did a trip to Bribie Island and had 4 people loaded in the car, and we're going through that entry track, which I'm sure a lot of you know, and we're hitting the whoops and it was just soaking it up. So these probably have been one of the best shocks I've ran in terms of how well they perform for the price. Obviously, you can go out and spend tens of thousands of dollars doing custom suspension and all that jazz, but for what you get, for what you pay, this is honestly one of the best shocks, and highly recommend them. And they are simple because you can just throw them in without having to weld anything up or cut stuff or raise your towers, anything like that. Question number 4, are they easy to install? You will probably have already seen or will about to see, depending on where I put this segment in, but you will see me jack this car up now, only using the tools I have in the shed and one jack, and I'll get these in on my own. So it can be a one-person show if you know what you're doing and if you've got the tools for it, as long as you're being safe. Otherwise, you can get them to install at the shop, but they are relatively easy because it's all bolt in, and if you know what you're doing, you just slap them in, probably 2 to 3 hours max. And last but not least, the 5th question is, how do they go on corrugations? Now, I've probably only done a little bit of corrugation driving when we did a trip up north in the GQ, and what I did was I just played around with the compression and the rebound and had it really dialed in. We did have the tyres deflated a little bit as well. Obviously on corrugations, that's what you want to do. But with that little bit of adjustment on the side of the road, changed that rebound, got it dialed in, it was unreal. You can barely feel it, and it just allows you to keep the car a lot more steady on the road. If you've got non-adjustable shocks and they're super stiff and the car just starts bouncing everywhere and you've got no traction, then it's going to be really squirrely on the road and it's not going to feel planted. When you've got that adjustment, you can actually feel a lot more connected to the road on and off road. So it does make a difference and makes the car a lot more safe. Alrighty guys, that's pretty much going to wrap up this video now. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Make sure you go check out Fulcrum online or in store. They've got their stores all around Australia with fitting specialists and stuff. I actually will be on the Fulcrum stand down at the Melbourne show. So this video will be dropping Monday 11th of August. So if you're watching it now, if you're down in Victoria, go buy a ticket. So the show goes from Friday the 22nd to the Sunday the 24th. So it's a 3-day event. It's great fun. I've been there a few years in a row now, and there's so many things to look at, hundreds of stalls and thousands of people go through there. So it's great for meeting people, chatting, seeing new products that are being released and getting yourself a really good deal. So I'll be on the Fulcrum stand with hundreds of stickers giving out for free. I'll be there with the GU, so you can check that out in person, because there's going to be a lot of big changes on that car between sort of over the last few weeks. We've changed a lot, probably stuff that you guys haven't even seen yet on YouTube. So check it out in person, come have a chat to me, we can talk about the suspension, jump under the car, have a look at all the new shocks and stuff under the car, and yeah, it's just a good weekend. So pop down if you can. If you're down in Victoria, make the trip, and otherwise I will catch you in the next video. Cheers.